Welcome to Review Ready Beyond Keywords for Advanced Searching. This is one of the classes in our series that we've done for Review Ready. So I think we have one more class in the series that talks about data extraction and everything in between that after you've done the search. So do keep that in mind if you're interested in doing a large review like a systematic review or rapid review. First off, I'm Charlotte. I'm one of the education and research librarians here. I'm going to be joined later by Kayleen, the person who checked you in. So, objectives. So, we're going to do a brief introduction on literature searching. We're going to do advanced search tips, indexing, proximity, truncation. We're going to talk about translating search strings across databases. Then we're going to do treasure hunting for gray literature. Document. That means you're going to document that search that you do, and then what the library can do for you. And we did want to point this out that we always think that our research process is going to be a linear process, right? We're going to have a timeline. We're going to have things that we check off as we go, and it's just going to be this easy straight line to the finish line. And it's often not like that. It is a large squiggly line with a lot of backtracking and things like that. We recently learned that, for example, having to restart a scoping review that we are working on in the library. All right, so now we have just a quick, a little bit of advertisement for our guide. There is a convenient literature searching guide. So you'll start with maybe a research question and a framework, and then go into the different ways to build that search that you need. And it's kind of giving you instructions on how to get to it from our website. So, tools and AI. So, standard searching tools should be used before starting. And those are going to be any kind of citation manager that you prefer. We do provide EndNote on campus, but we just want you to use something to organize and collect those citations that you're researching for your project. And we also suggest using libkeynomad, which is a browser extension for one-click full text access to articles. As far as AI, that's always a question. Can we use AI on our systematic reviews? Can we use them on our rapid reviews? And the current review standards do not recommend any specific AI usage in the process. There are some new standards coming out that say if you use them, you have to determine if they're going to mess with the quality of your project, the validity of your project, and so on and so forth. And if you can't answer that question with a resounding no, then you probably shouldn't use it. And if you do use any type of AI, you would want to disclose it. Specifically, what we suggest you use AI for is topic for familiarity. Like, we suggest some of our AI products, like Scopus AI. It'll give you an overview with valid resources and citations on the topic that you're interested in. It will also help you discover keywords. AI and Copilot can do that, and help you formulate a research question. And if you look in the example, I've not only formulated a question that I wanted them to put into PICO framework, but I've also done a Scopus AI search on interventions with elderly that have diabetes and how to improve the A1C. And you can see, maybe it might be hard, but it actually shows you the keywords they're using in their search. And they actually do a pretty good, solid search string that you could use and then build upon to start your searching. Preliminary searching.
Question?
Oh, yes.
I have a question about the use of AI.
Yes.
And so, would you consider, say, you write a paragraph on your own, but you don't think the flow is good enough, so you put it in AI to improve the flow. Would you consider that prohibited use of AI in review?
So the question was, can you use AI to help improve the flow of your writing when you're writing scientifically, for example. And typically what we would tell you is probably not, because our AI generators, our AI like detectors and Canva and other things can detect that. Oftentimes, if you're trying to get something published, they will ask you to be sure that you disclose any AI use, right? And if you're found to have used it for something within writing, within the search process, whatever, and you didn't disclose it, that could be something that could be problematic down the road for you. So specifically for students, we always say, look at your syllabi, look at what the professor says about AI use, right? Publishers will have the same thing. So if you're trying to get a project published, you're going to want to look at that website and understand exactly what they will allow. And most of the time, if they allow it, they do require you to be explicitly disclose how you used it, when you used it, et cetera. And you usually have to cite it. Anything, Kayleen, to add?
Yeah, I'll also mention that any sort of information that you put into an AI, especially if it's like a generative AI, they now own or can reuse the words and prompts that you put in there, right? So if you have like a research topic that you're really excited about and you plug it into AI, they now have that data. And unless you look at what they are doing with the kinds of prompts that you put in there, they can reuse what like your intellectual property because you put it in there. So that's the other thing you want to maybe think about is any sort of privacy implications and what that can mean for if it's going to be now used to train other AI tools. So just something to be aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so for preliminary searching, you're going to want to identify if somebody has already published a review on your topic. And when we talk about reviews, we're really not talking about that low-level literature review. You know, we're talking about these higher level, at the top of the evidence pyramid, meta-analysis, systematic reviews, rapid reviews, scoping reviews, okay? So you will want to see if somebody has published the review on your topic to prevent duplication. And essentially, the issue is, like for our scoping review that we had to restart, we found that somebody else had just published a brand new scoping review that we hadn't found in our preliminary searching. We hadn't found a protocol or anything that listed that's what they were doing. And so you do want to look at those protocol registries and open science framework and stuff like that to look and see if anybody's already doing this research, because ostensibly they would find the same things you would find if they're doing a good search. Now, you can look at scoping reviews that have just come out, and if you don't think that that's a good search and that you could find better and you can do better, by all means, do the project. But anyway, methodology and or review protocol on your topic can provide keywords and synonyms and database ideas. So that's always good. You can also look at, just find reviews on your topic and or within your discipline for the topic and just look and see what databases they're using, what keywords they're using on your topic, and things like that. And of course, it confirms the validity of your topic. If there's not a whole lot of results, that's not to say you can't do the project, it's just harder. And so you may not want to do that for a project, you may want to change your focus. What is indexing and subject headings? Indexing is like tagging. It involves organizing information in a structured and consistent way to enable efficient searching and results, and that's usually by keywords or subject headings. PubMed has MESH, which stands for medical subject headings, and Embase has Emtree. Other databases will have their own. Why have subject headings and indexing? Authors will use different words and spellings, and languages vary across time, location, and audience. We see that a lot with paracetamol, for example, that's used in the UK, where it's like, what, Tylenol here or acetaminophen. Okay. So that is kind of the key. It's standardizing everything. It's normalizing that language so that even if you put in a certain type of word, it's going to be under that tree of that overarching subject heading. And so when you search by subject heading, it's equal to searching by the concept rather than a specific keyword, or it's searching multiple keywords under that umbrella. When to use indexing and subject headings. When you want to perform an exhaustive search, a comprehensive search. Those are usually required for those upper level reviews that we're talking about, systematic reviews, rapid reviews, scoping reviews. You want to generally get as much of everything as possible within the limits that you have and the dates that you chose, et cetera. You also want to use them when the database has subject headings to use, such as Web of Science and Google Scholar do not use them. So you wouldn't have to find the subject headings for that search if you're translating that from another search that does have subject headings. You want to retrieve results even if the terms aren't in the title and abstracts. That's a big one because there may be plenty in the body of the text of the article that mention your topic, but somehow something was lost in translation when they did the abstract and it just didn't get in there, or the title. And then if terminology has changed over time, which frequently occurs in science and medicine, and my example that I put is heart attack, is now considered myocardial infarction. So if you were to search heart attack, it would still pull it up generally, depending on the database, but you would probably want to also use that mesh subject heading in PubMed. All right, some basic searches. Basic searches use keywords and synonyms derived from the research question. So for example, elderly, older adults, diabetes, A1C, diabetes education. This is generally a search that a student would come to me with. And oftentimes they think, oh, well, what I'm showing them with Boolean operators and nesting is going to be the advanced part. But actually, as librarians, we consider Boolean operators and nesting to be kind of basic. And so we've kind of added those in under the basic umbrella for this purposes. But you can see Boolean operators are just using those ands, ors, or nots. And that helps you either expand or narrow your search, depending on what you're using it for. And then concepts, as far as nesting. Nesting is just keeping your search terms and your keywords together to search within the same topic or subtopic of your question. And it just helps it organize better, and it really helps you kind of streamline your results and get better results related to all of the different topics that you're searching for. All right, to advanced, phrasing and proximity. So use quotations to search specific phrasing. This means if it's got more than one word, you're probably going to want to use phrasing. So like type 2 diabetes as a phrase, if you want that in your search, you would probably need to put quotations around it and so on. If it's more than one word, especially as a keyword, you want to put quotation marks. Depending on the database, find words close together by using proximity operators. And I will say this varies widely across different databases. I specifically am using, I think this one is from, it might be from Embase. So when you see the W/3, it's looking for the next concept within 3 words of the other concepts. Next, we have wildcards and indexing. So we already mentioned what subject headings are, but a good search, especially for a review, should include those subject headings if possible. If the database doesn't have them, it is what it is. But if they have them, you should be including them. And so you should be able to find ways on each database how to figure out what the subject headings are. Oftentimes within an article in PubMed, you can just click into an article that's relevant to your topic, scroll down to the bottom, and you can see the mesh terms that are used for that topic and pull out what you might use. Truncation and wildcard, it's just basically if there's more words that you can pull out that would be similar to your topic. For example, older adult could be older adults. Diabetes could be diabetic. It could be other words that are related to diabetes, and it would pull those out as well. And again, just across databases, it varies wildly if they accept them and what you have to use to do the wildcards or truncation. And then all together, this is kind of all of those different advanced search strategies together in one search that has kind of followed us through the whole process. And I will say, I just looked at this and I thought, okay, I wonder if the students or faculty even can determine if this, what is problematic about this search. I already see an issue. Does anybody see it? I'll give you a hint. Is there another type of diabetes? Yes. So if I'm just searching diabetes by itself, I happen to know that elderly can have type 1 diabetes. I have an uncle that has it. So you could be skewing your results by including diabetes and get some results that you don't want. So you might want to modify that, is my point. So you can see here down at the bottom, we did a PubMed search and we were able to get 1,500 plus articles on that topic. So this is an actual search that we performed, and then you would go through and look through it and so on. All right, lost in translation. So when searching the same topic across multiple databases, you will need to translate that search into multiple databases. And each database has their own search function and rules. Subject headings will change and will not always be used. Search features like what I said, truncation, wildcards, proximity, are not standardized, can use different characters and may not work together. So your search that works in Scholar or PubMed may not work in another. And you'd have to kind of figure out why that why it's not working. And we do that a lot. We're like, what symbol is not making this right? Or what word is not really processing well? And of course, keywords can stay the same across searching, but your results will vary across different databases. And you'll be surprised that a database you thought would be really well supported for this topic may not have it, but another database would. All right, now it's time for your treasure hunt, and I'm going to hand it over to Kayleen.
So if you think advanced searching is looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, gray literature is even worse because advanced searching, there's like some rhyme and rhythm to it, right? So you have your keywords. You're like, okay, I'm using truncation, so I just need to go to Embase and figure out what truncation symbol they use. And so you can easily like swap it out to make everything look well. Gray literature searching is anything that you cannot find in a database, essentially. And if you're performing one of these reviews, your systematic reviews, your scoping reviews, anything that's like that high level of evidence, you need to be searching gray literature as well. And this process is time consuming. It has a lot of information out there. And sometimes you can do a lot of like time and effort and not get a lot of sources. However, if you really like things like kind of like going down the rabbit hole when it comes to research, this can be really fun and can be really fun for me. It can also be the bane of my existence, depending on how I'm feeling that day. So gray literature, there's no like gold standard. There's no, this is the exact way that you do. But you essentially take that really long advanced search that you have created and then you simplify it because a lot of the places that you're looking for won't use some of these things like Google Scholar and truncation. Don't know if that's going to work. If you're searching like the CDC website and you try truncation, that's also not going to work. So it's a lot of trying to find a lot of information and then filtering through it. The reason that we do gray literature searching is because there is some information and research out there that is not published that can also be very helpful. And so this can help counter any sort of publication bias. Sometimes you will see the latest, greatest way of doing something in education that you saw at a conference, but that conference poster presentation won't necessarily be published in an article yet. And so you can get a lot of good ideas and information to synthesize outside of just what you can find in the databases that we use. So that is why we do gray searching. So what is it? I found this from the Cochrane Handbook of Systematic Reviews of Interventions. Cochrane's kind of like the gold standard, but they're essentially saying it's produced on all levels of government, academics, business, industry, which is not controlled by commercial publishers. So this is going to be things that aren't ever going to be published necessarily in a journal. And so, like I mentioned before, the search process is much more simple, but there's a lot more information that you have to filter through. And this is where things like a Control F when you're looking through pages of documents can be really helpful. For example, I was on the scoping review and they said, we want conference proposals and abstracts and papers. And I said, cool. And they said, hey, could you please maybe go back the past 5 years? Here's these top 3 medical conferences. Cool. So there's no way to search this. So I found and downloaded like 300-page PDF documents. So we're talking about like your top hospital conference, your top medical education conference. And I did Control F to find online curriculum, medical students, and online learning. And then I went through each of those places where that was highlighted in the PDF. And then I pulled that citation out. I put it in my citation manager. It took hours. I mean, hours. We're talking 5 years, 300 pages each for 3 conferences. And I found 6 results. So something will look a little bit like this. You'll have your big search string, and then what you end up searching is something like diabetes patient education, and then hope somewhere in there it talks about elderly people or older adults. Here's some of the different types of gray literature. Because gray literature is hard to find, the next few slides are kind of a mixture of here's a bunch of resources you might want to use depending on your project. So I'm not going to read everything because you all don't need me to do that. But all of your gray literature and your choices will be dependent on your topic. So for the topic that I was at, they were really interested in curriculum. So looking for like government websites, unless it was an educational website, wasn't going to be very helpful. They didn't want to look at thesis and dissertation, so I didn't look at thesis and dissertation. So whatever gray literature you're going to look will be dependent on your inclusion-exclusion criteria in your study. So if you're only looking for randomized control trials, thesis, dissertation, probably not where you want to look. Clinicaltrials.gov, maybe that's a good one to do, okay? So it's all going to depend on what you're looking for. I will talk about some of these, not all of these. Feel free to read them at your leisure. Okay. Some general information. Where can you find things about gray literature? We have a brand new database called Applied Science Commons, and I am stoked for it. And I'll show you, we'll do like a quick demo real quick so you can see what it looks like. But it's one of our newer databases, and it is like pulling together gray literature. So it's one good place that you can go to say, hey, we're going to search in this as well as these other gray literature places. These other ones that are listed on this slide are essentially different kinds of like databases or guides that people have kind of put together other links. So if you go to like Canada's Drug Agency, it's going to have like other places for you to search. You're not going to be able to search all of Canada's all of Canada's gray literature from that. So it just gives you more information. Okay, Applied Science Commons. This one's fun. So it essentially pulls together lots of different white papers, case studies, other gray literature, and it puts it together into this nice little search box for you. We are currently doing a scoping review with us librarians about library anxiety, and it actually was able to find some things on there, which is really great because it's not just biomedical. So if your search or your project is not specifically medical, then this could be a helpful one for you too. Okay. So you can get to it from our library website. You can come down to databases, A to Z list, and then search A, and it's at the very bottom of the list. You will have to, if you get if you're wanting to export the citations, you'll have to create an account, but it works pretty well. Okay, so I'm just going to put in, hold on, I'm gonna put this down.
We're gonna use the same search that we did before, diabetes and patient, education. Again, I'm using those quotes because I specifically wanted to look for patient education as a phrase and not like patient in one paragraph and education on the last paragraph. And then our third concept was older adults. And then we'll go ahead and search. They are constantly adding to this, but you could say, hey, I searched this at this time. But you can see there's like 2,593 results. It does have some different like content and publication types. So if you said, we do not care about blogs or editorials or anything like that, I don't want to hear your podcast, you can go ahead and filter for what you're looking for. So if you're only looking for, let's say, our reports and our conference, but we didn't care about these other things, you can apply the filter from there.
I will mention that with this, I have been playing around with it since we got it, and some of the search capabilities are not like super great, but it is nice that they have literally pulled together a bunch of great literature for us, and it's a great starting place, as well as searching some other things, which we are now going to talk about. So if you are looking for thesis and dissertations, we have a few things here at the library that will index thesis and dissertation, which means you can find them in some kind of database. So CINAHL will have them, APA Psych, and then ProQuest, we actually have access to ProQuest through Web of Science. It won't necessarily give you the full text to those places, but it will at least show you which ones are out there. I should also mention, with my scoping review that I did, and I searched for hours and lots of pages, the thing they don't tell you about conference abstracts and some of these dissertations, getting the information can require another step, which is contacting the author to ask for that information. Oftentimes, they'll just give you an abstract and you might not have access to the actual content. So on top of doing all your advanced searching and doing all of this gray literature searching, if those citations get to that full text article moment in your project, you'll need to talk to someone to get that information so you can see whether or not it qualifies for your study. Okay, we're kind of shortish on time. Trials and results registries, there's a lot of them out there, lots of places where people have to register their clinical trials. So here is just a very short list. Conference abstracts and proceedings, you can find them in some databases. There are different filters, like you see up there, PubMed, Embase, Web of Science. You can essentially filter for those. Then you want to do something outside of what you've already been doing called hand searching. Hand searching is essentially where you take a journal. So say you're wanting to do something on like yoga interventions, and there's a journal called Yoga that may or may not be indexed somewhere. Hand searching is, again, going like from the front to the back of the journal and looking through it to see whether or not it has the information that you need. Again, this is where like that Control F might be really helpful. But just know that like some journals, especially for like randomized control trials before a certain period, were not indexed in like PubMed. And so these would be like the unpublished part of the journals. This would be the letter to the editors, all of that, which you may or may not want to include in your research. However, you do want to perform some hand searching. The other thing that you can do is looking at the different references. So say you don't want to include systematic reviews in your research. However, there is a systematic review kind of on your topic. Look at those references and use the references that may or may not work for your study. So this is essentially a way of finding more information. What's also really great about finding other systematic reviews, scoping reviews, those kinds of things, if it's a good one, they have published a search string on there. And so there's a nice way to find not just relevant studies, but other keywords that might be helpful. I was helping a group this week and they were doing yoga. And so we found someone who did a systematic review on yoga, and they published their search string. So we were able to pull out like the specific kinds of yoga besides just yoga or meditation. And so we were able to add that to the search term. They'll also tell you which databases are used. So if you're like, I have no idea where to start and you don't want to talk to us librarians, it's another way that you can kind of find some things. You can also find lots of information on where people have published their protocols like Prospero. You can look at textbooks and see what references they've used, as well as like up to date. Look at their references and see if anything that they're citing might work for your project. This is all part of reference searching. And then there's the general web search. This is your Google Scholar. This is your, I'm just going to stick it in some sort of search engine and hope to find some things that might be relevant for my project. I will mention that maybe try searching different search engines or try using different search engines, because as we know, algorithms kind of rule the day. And so your Google account might give you different kinds of information. So maybe try performing a similar search in a couple different browsers. Like DuckDuckGo is really good because it's very generic and doesn't keep data. And so it would be like a good clean slate to do some of these searchings. You will want to also look at relevant organizations. Again, all of this will be dependent on what your inclusion-exclusion criteria will be. But you would think like if you're doing a study on like Alzheimer's, like going to the Alzheimer's Association to see what they've published might be really helpful, even if that hasn't been shown in a database. The main part of all this gray literature searching, because there's no gold standard, you want to try to be as consistent as possible across all these different places, as well as take screenshots for permanence and date that, because often, as we know, web pages will change and links will break. And so this is a way to kind of back up your research, which kind of goes into this documenting everything. Here online is an image of what my search string was for that scoping review, where I looked at, 45,000 or 4,500 conference abstracts. You want to document everything that you can, partially to save your own sanity when maybe it takes a couple years to publish something, and then the publisher's like, I need you to rerun all of your searches because it's been too long since the search was performed. So it's a nice fail-safe. You'll want to post some of this in your paper. That helps with reproducibility, which is all what evidence synthesis is all about, is to be reproducible and transparent. At minimum, you'll want the date of when you perform that search, where you searched, what the search string was, and then the number of results. Number of results can kind of not be there depending on if it's gray literature. So how can we help at the library? If you have questions, we've got a systematic review guide, which is pretty comprehensive. It'll help you talk or look through things. It'll have gray literature information on there as well. You are welcome to come to us and we will do a press review, which is a peer review of your search string, to make sure that your search string looks comprehensive, right? Usually if we do a press review, we do ask for like at least acknowledgement in a paper, like, hey, the library helped me with this. And then of course, if you would just like to come and talk to us and get personalized help, we are happy to do that. I do that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Here's our contact information. Just send us an email and we'll get you hooked up with your liaison librarian. If you could take this short survey, it's like 3 or 4 questions, and just give us some feedback. Let us know how we did, if you liked anything, if you learned anything. If you really liked us, tell your friends. We have one more lunch and learn happening about data extraction. I will be talking about things like covidence as well as EndNote, as just the different tools to help you with your evidence synthesis projects. That will be next Thursday. So if you want to come eat more free food, I haven't decided what we're doing yet, but you're welcome to RSVP on our Engage site. And now I have time for questions if anybody has any questions that you haven't asked already. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great day, guys.